A Wisconsin man lived with his girlfriend's decomposing body for 3 weeks before reporting her death. And a murdered mother called police weeks before she was killed to report a suspicious backpack left in her garage. Plus, we have an update on a heartbreaking case out of Texas that happened back in 2020 and highlights the horror that can occur in foster and adoptive homes. Hi, everyone. Welcome to a brand new series that we're doing here on the DARKLIVITY podcast, inspired by one of my favorite true crime duos, Derek and Stephanie from Crime Weekly. I know a lot of you like them as well, and I've always loved their weekly news breakdowns on current cases. So I wanted to cover some over here after randomly doing one on my main channel the other day, and a lot of you said you really liked it. I hope that these can help keep you up to date on current cases, and they give us a chance to spread the word about cases that might need your help, like ones with GoFundMes, for example, and we can share stories that are unfolding in real time. So if you've never been here before, I'm your host, Kimbyr, and I am here with my co-host, my husband, Jonathan, and together we will bring you late-breaking true crime news cases that we would love to discuss with you in the comments.
That's right. DARKLIVITY is the dark downward slope into the degradation of the human mind and the consequences that such darkness brings to light.
And don't worry, we didn't get rid of the Jonathan. It's just not going to be in our intro for these weekly updates, but don't be too sad. You will see it soon.
Yes, and as always, like and subscribe and show some support by getting some merch.
And I'll tell you right now, the 3 cases on our docket today are all so terrifying that they seem like they could actually be fiction. The first one, which is the title of this video, is just wow. I mean, the headline alone, when I saw it, a Wisconsin man lived with his girlfriend's decomposing body for 3 weeks before reporting that she had died. Right away, I'm sure most of you are thinking, what? How? Like, why there's so many questions? But first of all, everything that we're sharing today is alleged. Obviously, these are current cases. They're happening right now. And these are merely our opinions on the cases because we only have a portion of the facts and everyone is innocent until proven guilty. But let's break it down for you. The Wisconsin man is 23-year-old Serkan Akcilad, and he's a Turkish national who was living in Milwaukee, Wisconsin on verified asylum status at the time that these events occurred. He had no known local family, and he shared an apartment with his girlfriend, Serkan Tut. They did not have any children together, but they did have pet hamsters in their apartment, according to reports. Neighbors knew little about him personally, but he was described as living a relatively quiet life until the shocking events unfolded. Serkan spoke limited English and often relied on a translation app to communicate.
Serkan's girlfriend Serkan was 21 and also from Turkey. People who knew her said she was a really kind person, and she stayed in touch with her family back home. She and Serkan lived together in Unit 535 at the Vim and Vigor Lofts on 10th Street in Milwaukee, right in the Brewery District downtown.
These were really nice apartments. They were modern, they were new, they were walking distance to lively spots near the Milwaukee Riverwalk. Their website says, come home to the relaxed, sophisticated living at Vim and Vigor Lofts. Our apartments are in the Brewery District in a vibrant area near the Fiserv Forum, dozens of restaurants, and the Milwaukee Riverwalk. They offered modern apartments with tons of amenities and a warm, active environment. Outside their front door was a game lounge, a rooftop courtyard with grilling stations, and a fitness center. So this death, this killing, came as a shock to everyone in this neighborhood. It turned from a warm environment to something seemingly very cold-blooded. It all started on January 8th of 2025. A letter from the property manager of Vim and Vigor Lofts was sent to Serkan warning him that rent was past due and demanding payment or they would need to vacate by a certain date. Now, this becomes significant. It meant that Serkan knew the landlord was planning to check on the apartment in late February. At the end of January, the couple had planned a weekend trip to Chicago, and Serkan had told her family about that, and they were going to leave around January 24th and return the 27th. So her family figured that she would be out of touch for at least a few days while traveling. But what was unusual was that after that weekend, Serkan did not check in with her parents or her friends on the phone. She wouldn't talk to them. She wouldn't pick up the phone and call them, but she would text them and use social media. So it was a little unusual, but it wasn't that alarming at the time.
Sounds familiar.
Oh, the case we just did?
Yep.
Exactly.
By mid-February, Serkan still hadn't actually spoken to her family, and they began to get pretty worried. They started calling her non-stop, begging her to just pick up the phone so they know that she was okay. She kept insisting that she was just super busy and even told them that she was heading to a wedding that day. And to back it up, she even sent a photo of herself all dressed up. But there was a problem. After some digging, the family realized the photo was actually from December. But it took them about another week to put that all together. And then, as the end of the month approached on February 26th, the apartment building's property managers informed Serkan that they planned to enter the unit on February 28th to follow up on the unpaid rent. At this point, Serkan knew the inspection was coming. He knew he couldn't hide what was in the apartment any longer. So, on February 27th, just one day before the inspection, Serkan walks into the Milwaukee Police Administration building in the afternoon. He goes up to the front desk, pulls out his phone, and uses Google Translate to communicate. And through the app, he tells the officer on duty that his girlfriend is dead in their apartment and has been there for a while.
Now, I know we're not showing pictures of Salon. Number one, privacy right now. They haven't fully given a lot of facts about this case. It's just now happening. But also, I did find a few, but like I had told John, I'm not going to show those because I don't know if that's really her, but I'm like 98.999% sure. But what I found so interesting up front is that this guy doesn't look at first glance. And we all know the looks can be deceiving, but like at first glance, I was telling John, he's got like the blue eyes and the dreamy pictures, and he's kind of like sitting there posing on Facebook. It just doesn't really strike you right away that he would be dangerous.
Anybody is capable of anything.
Of course. And he's sitting there going to the police department now and saying, my girlfriend is dead. And I can just imagine the shock on that officer's face. Serkan specifies that Salon died around 20 days before this, and that he hadn't reported it earlier because he was, in his words, unfamiliar with the laws in the United States. Well, of course, police dispatch officers to the address immediately for a welfare check, and when they opened the door to their apartment, they discovered Salon's body in an advanced state of decomposition, consistent with 3 or 4 weeks post-mortem, and it was emitting a strong odor by that point. She was in the living room in a very odd position. She was lying face up with a pillow underneath her head, her arms neatly by her sides, which officers noted as looking staged. It was clear that her death was not natural. It appeared that she had been cleaned up, but there were visible stab wounds to her neck and her arms.
As the officers did a preliminary search of the apartment, they immediately noticed something on the floor. It had residue, like someone had scrubbed or mopped it aggressively. A brand new area rug had been placed over one section, likely to cover up whatever was underneath. When investigators lifted that rug, they found what appeared to be an arterial spurt pattern. That's a clear sign of a severe bleeding injury. It looked like someone had tried to clean it up, but the stains hadn't been completely erased.
And there was also clothes and linens with bloodstains on them that were found stuffed in the apartment's washing machine. And this indicated there was an attempt to wash away additional evidence. In the kitchen, police discovered a box cutter that was in the dishwasher. Now that's weird.
It looked suspicious because all the other knives in the kitchen were dull. So this was the only sharpest thing, and it was in the dishwasher.
Right. There were butter knives that were around still, but they couldn't have done what these investigators saw. They couldn't inflict those kind of wounds. And Serkan flatly denied to the police that he cleaned anything or washed any bloody clothes. But the physical evidence of the cleaning supplies and the washed items strongly contradicted this. The apartment showed evidence of an extensive cleanup operation. So they decided to bring in the crime scene analysts for a more detailed investigation.
Using Blue Star and luminol chemical reagents, investigators uncovered clear traces of blood spatter and a large pooled stain that had seeped into the flooring. This evidence suggested that the actual stabbing had taken place elsewhere in the living room, not where Salon was ultimately found. The blood was hidden beneath the newly purchased rug, pointing to a deliberate attempt to cover up the crime. Investigators also found drag marks illuminated by Blue Star, indicating that Salon's body had been moved to an area that could be cleaned. After documenting the scene, her body was transferred to the medical examiner's office for an autopsy and official identification.
Exactly, because when they were looking at the hardwood floors in the beginning, they couldn't see anything except for like smear marks, like it looked like someone had cleaned up. But then when they started lifting the rug and looking around, they could see the trail of blood where he tried to pick her up and move her because he had to clean that area. Or, allegedly, we'll get to that in a minute. But of course, Serkan was immediately taken into custody for questioning. At the police station, officers and medical staff make a very shocking discovery of their own. Serkan had a nail embedded inside of his skull. Yes, this man had been living with a 1.5-inch nail embedded through the skin of his head into his skull and then extending into his brain. I don't even know how that's even possible.
How did you miss all the motor functionality part? I don't know. That's
He
crazy.
had attempted a self-exit, but clearly this was not successful. Detectives asked him what happened, and he admitted that on January 25th, he bought a nail gun and construction nails at the hardware store, and then he went back to his apartment and he used it on himself. But astonishingly, he survived, and he did not even go to the hospital or seek any kind of medical attention. Besides the head injury, he did not have any other notable wounds on him when he was arrested. There was no indications of defensive wounds or a struggle on his body. He was then transported to a local hospital where surgeons successfully removed the nail from his brain in an emergency procedure, and remarkably, this man survived.
And the next day, February 28th, the medical examiner formally identified 21-year-old Serkan Akcilad as the victim. The autopsy revealed that she had suffered 12 stab wounds to her neck, her abdomen, back, and arms. The cause of death was determined to be an extreme blood loss, and the manner of death was ruled a homicide. Once Serkan was out of surgery and able to speak with the detectives for a formal interview, he denied killing his girlfriend.
That's right, and that's why I said, allegedly, he dragged her. But his story is that he came home from work on Friday, January 24th, and as they were planning for their weekend in Chicago, he went to the store for about an hour to buy some cleaning supplies because their hamsters, there's where the hamsters come in, would attract bugs, and they wanted to tidy up before leaving. He claimed that when he returned home that night, he found Serkan lying on the floor covered in blood, and initially thought that she was pulling a prank on him and just pretending to be hurt. But then he realized she was unconscious, unresponsive, and in his words, as cold as ice. And that's when he fainted from shock. He was suggesting that his girlfriend was brutally killed while he wasn't home, and there was some kind of unknown assailant out there. But there were no signs of forced entry into their apartment, which in all likelihood pointed to Serkan being the perpetrator.
When detectives asked why he didn't call the authorities, Serkan claimed that when he came to, he panicked and had no idea what to do. But why not call later, once he had time to calm down?
Right. He waited 3 whole weeks. I think at that point, wouldn't the shock kind of wear off if that was a true story? Or wouldn't you care about your girlfriend you found her murdered?
He said he was unfamiliar with the laws of this country and wasn't sure what the proper course of action was. He also admitted that he was afraid he'd be blamed for the murder.
Well, I mean, all signs kind of point that way, right?
And at one point, he also brought up cultural differences as the reason for his hesitation. But when detectives pressed him on how the situation like this would be handled in Turkey, he admitted that it would be pretty much the same. Authorities would investigate, so that excuse didn't really add up.
They would have done the same exact thing. He's like, I don't understand the laws here, but they would be the same where I come from. And he lived in this apartment with his girlfriend, his deceased girlfriend, for 3.5 weeks. And he told the detectives that he left her where she fell on the ground and even slept next to her body on the floor in the following days. He said he couldn't bear to move her at first, but at some point he placed a pillow under her head. But there's a lot more they uncovered already. They had interviewed neighbors who knew very little about them personally. They'd only seen them around the apartment complex, and they described them as quiet. But they had heard occasional loud arguments coming from their apartment, which could possibly mean there were tensions in the relationship. And on the night of January 24th specifically, there was one witness in the building that reported hearing the couple actually arguing with one another very loudly, followed by screaming for about 10 minutes. And this suggested a domestic dispute, but then there was just complete silence. Authorities estimate that this was the time when Serkan had died.
Neighbors didn't report seeing anyone other than Serkan coming or going from the apartment that night, and no one heard anything suggesting a third-party intruder. This reinforced the theory that whatever happened was between the couple, not some stranger breaking in and killing Serkan while Serkan was out, as he claimed. Investigators secured a warrant to search his blue Ford Escape SUV, and inside, they found a key piece of evidence, a store receipt from the night of January 24th, the suspected day of the murder. The receipt showed purchases of Clorox bleach, large trash bags, and Raid insect repellent. It came from a nearby Pick and Save supermarket and was time-stamped right around the time Serkan had said he was out running an errand.
I was thinking about the insect repellent, and it's like he was trying to prevent the body from attracting bugs and not his hamsters, and that just really made me sick to my stomach. There was even surveillance video from that store that showed Serkan pushing around a shopping cart with that bottle of bleach and then purchasing all of those items at the register. Police searched for the nail gun itself, but they never found it in his apartment. And when they asked him where it was, he said he had no idea what happened to it. However, they located a receipt dated January 25th showing the purchase of the nail gun from a hardware store. And this corroborated his story about how the nail ended up in his head. And it also lines up with him deciding to self-exit just one day after the neighbors heard those arguments coming from his unit. So it's like, why else would you have done that?
Right.
The fact that the nail gun and all the sharp knives were gone suggested that Serkan ditched them somewhere in the 20 days that he delayed reporting that his girlfriend was dead. This also shows his mental state within just the hours after she was killed. I mean, obviously he was freaking out to the point where he felt enough guilt to try to end his own life.
I mean, that body's not going to go anywhere.
And he knew that the landlord was going to come in. So he's like, okay, this is a pressing matter. They're going to come in a few days. I have to get rid of her. I have to report her,
And one particularly chilling discovery in the investigation was that Serkan had impersonated Salon through text messages and social media to deceive her family after she was already dead. In interviews, he admitted that in the weeks following her death, he used her cell phone, her online accounts to send messages to her relatives in Turkey, making it seem like she was still alive.
So this shows a lot of deliberation and calculation to create this illusion that she was still alive and well. And we also just talked about that in the case.
That's what I'm saying.
It's all of the trouble that he's going through.
All the planning.
Yeah, it's all the cleaning supplies, deliberately getting a nail gun.
Right, he was totally orchestrating a cover-up.
He denied killing her 10 times. So 10 different times he's like, no, I flat out did not kill my girlfriend. He stayed in that apartment. He ordered takeout food. There were receipts that were dated February 14th, Valentine's Day, through February 21st, and they were found in his trash can. And it showed that he was ordering food and eating it while his girlfriend was lying there in the living room, deceased. He's just going about his normal life with this nail in his brain as well. So I was thinking maybe that could have affected him in some way. I mean, it had to have, right? A little bit? If there are any doctors in the comments, let us know.
It should affect you, but it seemed like from this guy's actions, it didn't.
Very strange.
Unless his gait was affected by any means. I don't know.
At this point, Milwaukee County prosecutors arrested and charged Serkan with first-degree reckless homicide. And this charge implies that authorities believe he caused Salon's death under circumstances showing utter disregard for human life. It's not at this time a premeditated intentional homicide charge. And the criminal complaint also included a use of dangerous weapon modifier, and this is an enhancement to that charge, since a knife or sharp object was used to inflict the fatal injuries. Now, if convicted, this modifier can add more to his sentence. He's currently being held on a $1 million bond as he awaits his trial, and it's worth noting that these are just findings at this stage in the case. The defense will have the opportunity to challenge or offer alternative explanations for all this evidence in court. And his next court hearing is scheduled for the 28th, March 28th. So that's just about a week from now. So if we have any updates, we'll leave them on our community post. A judge will decide if there is enough evidence for this case to proceed to trial, and prosecutors are expected to present key findings from this investigation that we already told you about. And on social media and comment sections of videos and articles that I read, people have, of course, expressed a mixture of horror, sympathy for the victim, and also outrage. Many people struggle to comprehend Serkan's alleged actions. There were comments that ranged from how could anyone do this to theories about maybe something being wrong with his mental state. Some of the Turkish American community in Milwaukee were really saddened to hear this. They noted that both individuals had come from Turkey to Milwaukee to have a new life, only for one of them to end up dead in such a tragedy. There was a small informal vigil held for Salon that was organized outside of the apartment building a week after her discovery, with a few residents leaving flowers and candles. But because her family is overseas, there wasn't a large public memorial here. And this is still developing as well. Like, this is just coming out in the last few days. But of course, her family hopes that they find justice through the legal process.
Media attention also focused on the question, why first-degree reckless homicide and not murder?
I was wondering that too, but then I read some of the other legal arguments.
Some legal analysts explained in interviews that Wisconsin's first-degree reckless homicide charge still carries a potential 60-year sentence, but might be easier to prove if intent to kill isn't conclusively established. In contrast, an intentional homicide charge would require proving that Serkan meant to kill Salon, which could be a tougher legal hurdle.
Right. And I know it sounds so obvious, like if you stab someone, then you intended to kill them. But prosecutors have not publicly commented on their charging rationale. However, this indicates that they consider Salon's death maybe stemming from a domestic situation. You know, like in the heat of the moment, things escalated.
Still sounds like murder to me.
Well, yes. I mean, I understand because it does.
I didn't intend to do it.
I don't know. Maybe there's a lot of things we probably don't know yet.
Right. I get it. I totally understand. It's just murder should be murder. I got into a fight with somebody and accidentally killed them.
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with the premeditation that wasn't there. Like, this wasn't a pre-planned act. He went out afterwards and got like the cleaning solutions and stuff. However, I understand legally, like they always say, you know, premeditation can happen in the blink of an eye.
Right. Just because you're subconsciously thinking, I mean, you're fighting all this time, you're leading up to that fateful day, not intentionally, but in the back of your head, you let it get there.
The officials did caution, so this is what they said, that the defendants are presumed innocent until proven guilty and that this case will have its day in court. And if that happens, I will be watching for sure. But I'd love to hear all of your thoughts in the comments because I have a lot of thoughts about this one. I do agree with you. I think we don't know their relationship. People said they didn't hear them arguing often. Like, it just kind of came to a head that weekend.
I wonder if alcohol's involved.
I mean, they do live in the brewery district.
Right.
So, I mean, they're young. They're 21 and 23 years old. That's another thing to take into consideration.
Yeah. I mean, they're coming from Turkey. They left for a reason to come to America to hopefully get a better start. And I can imagine that they were probably struggling to some degree, maybe. I don't know.
I mean, everybody's struggling right now, really. So I could see how someone young, inexperienced with living here, the culture shock, I don't know how long they've been here. It would seem stress can get you to a crazy, deadly level, but let's hope that most of us find other outlets. Now, we do have a next story, and this is about the mom who reported a very suspicious backpack being left in her house before she was found dead, along with her own father and a neighbor. So we do have a 911 call, so let's play that for you now.
Hi, my name is Mary Gingles. I called on Friday. This is not an emergency, so I want to make sure I'm not taking up phone time. I think I need to make an informational report, but I don't even know if I could at this time. By that I mean I called on Friday because my ex-husband entered a home that we have a court order saying that I have full use and possession of. And he was wearing like a backpack. I had security cameras, and you can tell he's carrying something. And I was looking through the footage, and I noticed he left something in the house. So he left the house with less than he came in. I report every time I find something. So you let me know what I should do. Anyway, and I was talking to my dad at the same time on the phone, and he was looking at the footage. He was like, "Mary, there should be something in the house." He left the house with more stuff than he came in. And so I was like, okay, well then he's got to be somewhere. And then I thought maybe on the and you know, my intent is to get a restraining order because I just don't know what else to do because I'm just at a loss. And obviously the current court order is not doing anything. I don't know. Bye-bye.
I felt like it was very chilling hearing that call, knowing that soon this woman would be dead. That woman is 34-year-old Mary Catherine Gingles, who was living in Tamarack, Florida at the time.
Mary was a mother to a 4-year-old daughter, Seraphine, and the estranged wife of Nathan Gingles. Both she and Nathan had served in the military. Mary was an Army veteran who served from 2016 to 2020, leaving with the rank of captain. Nathan also served in the Army from 2011 to 2019. reaching the same rank and completing a tour in Afghanistan.
Mary was in the process of divorcing Nathan at the time of her death. She had repeatedly reported domestic issues that included physical altercations and threats by her husband. She filed 2 restraining orders, one in February of 2024 and another in December of 2024, amid allegations that Nathan stalked her, and she said that he, quote, saying that he was going to shoot me and there was nothing I could do about it, end quote. So this man would make up songs about killing her.
Fearing for her life, Mary had sole use of the Tamarack home per a court order and was actively trying to keep Nathan away for her safety. In the weeks leading up to the murder, she contacted police 14 times, reporting his menacing behavior.
So let's set up the timeline for you. In February 2024, Mary files her first DV injunction against Nathan. And in her divorce petition that same month, she described Nathan as heavily armed with multiple firearms and suppressors, and she expressed fear that violence was imminent. Broward Sheriff's deputies served Nathan with this restraining order, and then they seized several weapons from his home.
A flash forward to the end of the year, December of 2024, Mary obtains a second restraining order after more incidents of stalking and threats. A Broward judge signs a new injunction, officially prohibiting Nathan from contacting Mary or their daughter. However, court records reveal a critical failure. Nathan still had firearms because a responding deputy had not confiscated them as required.
Of course, this all showed their divorce remained contentious, and in late 2024, Nathan filed motions in family court attempting to regain access to the marital home and, of course, to contest any of his financial obligations, which the judge denied. In January of 2025, so just in the beginning of this year, Mary, who was fearing escalating danger, contacted the Broward County Sheriff's Office multiple times, like you said, to report alarming signs that she was in trouble. She tells deputies that Nathan snuck into her garage, which she captured on security cameras, and he left behind a backpack containing duct tape, zip ties, plastic restraints, a garbage bag, saran wrap, and other items that she said he would use to murder her. Can you even imagine seeing that and then also reporting it and even saying that her intent was to get a restraining order because she was at a loss? Obviously, the current court order is not doing anything. Those were her words.
Right? I mean, I feel like that's the same story for a lot of restraining orders.
We always hear it. And then she also reported finding a ladder propped up against an upstairs window that was left slightly open, and she suspected that Nathan had planted a tracking device on her car.
After Mary had contacted authorities all those times, that's like twice a month.
It's insane.
Sheriff's officials admitted that there were enough red flags during this time to justify charges or an arrest before the tragedy, but no action was taken.
So let's talk about the actual tragedy that unfolded. Here was a mother who loved ones described as devoted to her daughter and was just trying to raise her and do the best she could, despite a difficult situation that she found herself in. On Sunday, February 16th of 2025, around 6 in the morning, a neighbor dialed 911 after hearing roughly 4 gunshots, followed by a woman screaming, "Oh my God." And then moments later, the caller hears 2 more gunshots.
I just woke up out of the sleep and there's gunshots and screaming.
A lady was knocking really hard on my door, running in the street with a little girl.
Gunshots and a woman's screams could be heard on this surveillance video.
Deputies are dispatched to the scene, and upon arrival, they find Mary's 64-year-old father, David Ponzer, lying dead on the back patio. According to family, David was a very good man. He was very honest, and he often stayed at his daughter's house in Tamarack to support her through her volatile divorce. He wanted to protect her because clearly the restraining orders were not, and now he was dead. Every morning when he was there, he would enjoy a cup of coffee out on the patio, and that is what he was doing when he was shot in the head. He was innocently drinking his morning coffee. He was discovered still clutching the handle of a broken coffee mug, which is just so chilling. I mean, it's a sign that he didn't even see this coming. He was ambushed.
After searching the home, authorities found no additional victims or the attacker, but they quickly realized the crime scene spanned 2 residences on the same street. Mary Gingles' home, located at 5897 North Plum Bay Parkway. That's where the father was found. But another scene unfolded at a neighbor's house directly across the street, the home of 36-year-old Andrew Ferrin at 5888 North Plum Bay Parkway. Inside Andrew's home, investigators found him lying on the ground just a few feet from Mary, both shot to death at close range. Andrew was near the entrance while Mary's body was just inside the home. Piecing the events together, investigators believe that Mary witnessed her father's murder and ran to Andrew's house for help. Tragically, Andrew, completely unsuspecting, answered the door when he heard her frantic knocking, only to be confronted by the killer moments later.
Authorities believe Mary was either struck by bullets as she ran into the home or as she was already inside the home after Andrew was shot. Forensic teams recovered several .40 caliber shell casings from the scene that were consistent with the Sig Sauer P320 pistol that Mary's estranged husband Nathan owned. And of course, he was their prime suspect. It was evident that all three victims were shot by the same intruder in a continuous sequence of events. And it was pretty clear right away with the records that they had on Nathan that he was the shooter, including that 911 call from Mary reporting the suspicious, I'm going to call it a murder kit, the backpack that was found in her garage containing the zip ties, the duct tape, garbage bags, and other items that she believed was going to be used to kill her. And now she was dead. So as the cops canvass the area, Nathan is seen on a neighbor's security camera chasing Mary down the street with a gun in hand. And then they realize that there's a small barefoot child that was identified as the couple's daughter, Seraphine, trailing alongside him. And I could not believe that. So now they're fearing the worst, that this poor little girl, and I can't even imagine what she's already witnessed up to this point, but that she is with this man. And unfortunately, earlier that morning, as deputies set up a perimeter in that neighborhood, an officer spotted a man clad in black walking away from the area holding the hand of a small shoeless child, and he was just calmly walking down the street. But because of all the confusion and the commotion and Mary not being found yet, because they were doing the first crime scene sweep, responders did not realize that this man with the child was the shooter escaping. That was a major misstep here.
Seriously.
So there they were, still searching the area for an active shooter, and for Mary, fearing that maybe she had been abducted or injured. And at that point, Nathan had slipped away with his daughter in tow.
Between 6:15 and 6:30 a.m., before Mary is found at the neighbor's house, authorities issue an Amber Alert for her 4-year-old daughter, Seraphine. They also send out an alert with Nathan's description and vehicle details. Neighboring police units and Broward deputies immediately launch a manhunt for the armed suspect. And not long after, a license plate reader alerted law enforcement that Nathan's gray BMW had been spotted driving in North Lauderdale. By 7 a.m., less than an hour after the first 911 call, authorities locate the suspect. Broward deputies with help from other agencies converge on a Walmart Supercenter parking lot.
Of course, another Walmart involved. I mean, like he fled to a Walmart. That's where he was, at a Supercenter parking lot.
And they find Nathan's BMW parked, and inside the car, they discover Nathan with Seraphine. The child is recovered unharmed. Nathan is arrested without incident. While investigators find a handgun case in the vehicle, there's no firearm in his possession at the time of his arrest. Authorities suspect he disposed of the murder weapon somewhere along his route.
This could have been so much worse. I mean, that poor little girl was in such danger, and how could they have just let him slip away? I don't know. To me, I mean, I'm not an investigator. I'm not a cop. But for some reason, I would have known, I feel like. That would be.
I mean, what's the harm in stopping somebody to say, hey, buddy, come here for a sec. I got to ask you a question.
They have an active crime scene. They're just going to be like, oh, just go on your merry way.
Right.
Very weird. There was another officer that acted on a hunch, which I think the other officer should have done, and he dispatched a dive team to search a drainage canal along the likely getaway path, which is a half a mile from where the shooting happened. And there they recovered a Sig Sauer P320 handgun fitted with a suppressor. Now, this firearm was later confirmed to be the murder weapon, and also the serial number record showed this was the exact gun and silencer that had been listed on the weapons that the BSO was supposed to confiscate from Nathan under the restraining order back in 2024. But somehow, like you mentioned, there was a complete misstep again by this agency, and they did not confiscate this. Why? I don't know. But because he was in the military, I don't know. My biases towards this, it might not be true, but I was like, oh, maybe, he was like, I'm in the military, and that gave him some credence. Also, cops sometimes don't believe that women are really in domestic disputes. They sometimes side with the guy because they'll say, oh, my wife's just crazy. I mean, how many times have we heard that? How Nathan actually regained this weapon is still under investigation, but the possibilities include that it was returned to him at some point or just never confiscated to begin with. But ballistics did match the bullets from the victims to this gun. It was firmly tying Nathan to the shootings. And the presence of the suppressor, which is also known as a silencer, suggested that the attack was premeditated and it was designed to minimize the noise. The neighbors that called 911, they did describe hearing some gunshots, but it's possible that the suppressor reduced, the amount, and there could have been more louder.
Could have been a louder barrage.
And that could have delayed the full extent of what was actually happening.
Autopsy reports confirm that all 3 victims died from gunshot wounds. David Ponzer's autopsy noted a close contact gunshot wound to the head, suggesting he was shot point blank from behind or the side while seated. Mary suffered gunshot injuries to her torso. The exact number hasn't been disclosed, but the fatal shot may have been to her chest. Andrew Ferrin also sustained gunshot wounds reportedly to his chest and upper body. The pattern and trajectory of the bullets were consistent with Nathan firing immediately upon stepping inside the house. When detectives later searched Mary's house, they found chilling evidence on the kitchen table, a printed copy of the DV injunction that legally barred Nathan from coming near her or possessing firearms.
And now this injunction paper became part of the crime scene, when it should have protected her from this ever happening. And upstairs in the primary bedroom, officers found several gun cases and lock boxes that were empty and unlocked, with the padlocks and the keys discarded nearby. This suggested that Nathan had unlocked those gun cases either during a prior unlawful entry or on the morning of the attack to retrieve weapons. Now, it's possible that Nathan still had a key to those lock boxes from when he used to live in that house, or he could have broke them open, but I'm thinking it's that he had a key. There was also an implication that he may have stored backup weapons in Mary's home, unbeknownst to her. Because remember, he propped up that ladder, allegedly, had been inside of her home, and that morning he retrieved something that he left behind. Now, these findings reinforce how dangerous the situation had been. Despite court orders, Nathan had easily gained access to deadly weapons and to Mary's home. Investigators also collected Nathan's discarded black hoodie and gloves found in a trash bin near where his car was parked, near the Walmart, and they will be fully analyzed for bloodstains and gunshot residue.
For digital evidence, investigators gathered footage from neighborhood surveillance cameras. One neighbor, Adolfo Lang, had a security camera that captured part of the incident. Mary running and pounding on doors, Nathan pursuing her with the child at his side, and then also Nathan raising a firearm. Additionally, footage from Mary's own security system, including video from a prior garage incident and any recordings from the morning of February 16th, is still being analyzed by investigators.
Yeah, those are not out yet. I mean, this just happened, so I'm sure a lot more is going to be revealed, because if she had cameras in her house, it could have potentially caught what happened to her dad on camera, or her running around the house and Nathan inside. Phone records were also being examined. Nathan's cell phone GPS could have placed him at the scene if he had his phone on him, and any threatening messages or calls that he made could become significant and proof of intent. So far, the evidence in this case is overwhelming that Nathan carefully planned and executed this triple homicide. He probably didn't intend on killing the neighbor. I mean, that I think, sadly, was collateral damage, because he innocently let his neighbor inside. I mean, she's a woman, she's banging on his door, and that's really sad. And it's also sad that her dad, who is trying to do the job that authorities should have done, is with his daughter at the home trying to keep her safe, and he ends up dead. By all accounts, Nathan had a history of DV and controlling behavior, and now faces charges including 3 counts of first-degree murder, kidnapping, child abuse, a violation of a DV injunction, burglary, and child neglect.
Detectives believe that Nathan deliberately chose the early Sunday morning hour, knowing Mary would likely be home and possibly off guard. The fact that he wore all black clothing and may have waited for David and Mary to step outside, David for coffee and Mary possibly to investigate a noise or retrieve something, suggests premeditation and calculation.
The fact that he brought his 4-year-old daughter along while he was committing this crime, it's not only dangerous, but it could have been done as a pawn, to make Mary stop or catch her off guard, or even bring her guard down by taking the girl hostage.
Or because he just wanted her, and so he should take her now.
But they also showed video where she was following him. During the chase of her own mother. She was barefoot in her pajamas. And that's just horrifying. It's scary that the child's presence alone did not deter Nathan from committing the murders. His single focus at that point was killing Mary, and also any obstacle like her father or her helpful neighbor, anything that just stood in his way, and that's just sickening.
The post-incident investigation isn't just about the crime itself. It's also a hard look at law enforcement's response leading up to the murders. The Broward County Sheriff's Office Internal Affairs has launched an internal probe focusing on the deputies who handled Mary's numerous calls and reports in the weeks before the attack. Investigators are reviewing whether red flags were ignored and if more could have been done to prevent the tragedy. Sheriff Tony openly stated that his deputies had enough information to arrest Nathan and potentially preventing this tragedy.
Regrettably sorry to bring that to this family because they're hearing this right now. And it doesn't bring any solace to them, it only hurts them even more. Because I'm basically saying we had a chance to save your loved one's life and we failed.
But then we talked about this yesterday, and I said, okay, maybe arresting him would have helped, but...
How long would they have held him for?
Right. He violated the injunction, and then he could have possibly gotten a hold of guns anyway.
Right.
Because, let's face it, you can get them on the streets, you can get them from a friend. I don't think putting him in jail would have stopped him to ultimately carry out this crime.
Unfortunately, right. But one key lapse under scrutiny is the failure to confiscate Nathan's guns. But like you said, he could have got out and then just got more. But then there probably would have been a flag on his thing saying, hey, this guy's not allowed to have guns.
But you can get them on the street, or you could get them from your army buddy. Like,
Right.
hey, I'm going hunting this weekend. Like, there's so many ways that I feel like somebody can obtain a firearm,
Right.
especially in Florida. I mean, it's a lot different.
You can 3D print them now.
Exactly. We've been hearing about that. You can buy 4 different parts on Amazon, like put them together to create a firearm. But as a result of that internal investigation, 8 deputies have been suspended with pay, and 1 captain was actually demoted for deficiencies related to this case. And I just want to ask, it's like a broken record, but why do people, and it's usually women, have to die before these DV cases are taken seriously? I don't understand. I'm saying I know people personally that have had these issues with their partners, and okay, you put them in jail, but how long? Because you can only hold them so long unless they have gone over the threshold and done something physical to somebody.
Sure, they're hoping that time in jail will recalibrate their mind. They're like, oh, I don't want to go back here. This wasn't fun. Sometimes it just makes them more irate.
It gives them more time to sit there and plan and like be alone with their thoughts and stew. That's what I sometimes think happens. The physical evidence, the digital evidence, and witness accounts all align to show that Nathan premeditated this killing and he is solely responsible. But there's also a lot of reflection happening by law enforcement about how to better intervene in these DV cases so that they don't reach this horrific point where someone has to die. And I don't know, I am not an expert, but I feel like some of it might be outdated. Like how they respond could be outdated. Maybe they need more different classes, different ways to handle this. They have to be taught differently, because a lot of times when they get to a scene, we even saw this in like Gabby Petito's case, they give way too much credence to the people that are there. Like, no, separate them, do things, like make an action happen. Don't just like write it down on a report and think a piece of paper is going to stop someone.
February 18th, 2025, Nathan made his first appearance in Broward County Court, where a judge formally charged him and confirms that he will be held with no bond given the capital nature of his offenses.
Then on March 7th, just a week ago from when this video is being recorded, a Broward County grand jury formally indicted Nathan on 3 counts of first-degree murder, 1 for each victim. And later that morning, Nathan appeared in court for his arraignment, and he was dressed in a gray prison jumpsuit. The 43-year-old said nothing during the hearing, and his attorney entered a plea of not guilty on all counts on his behalf. But the prosecutors are actually seeking the death penalty in this case. And just a few days ago, on March 14th, the state attorney's office, they filed an official notice that they intended to seek the death penalty.
They cited multiple aggravating factors. The murders involved multiple victims. The killings were premeditated and occurred during a kidnapping. The crimes were committed in cold blood in front of his young child. Under Florida law, the death penalty requires proving such factors to a jury. This means the case will be handled as a capital murder trial.
Nathan, now formally charged, is facing possible execution if he is convicted, and he continues to await trial behind bars. The next scheduled court date is May 15th, and we will keep you updated when we hear what happens next. Last, we want to give you an update on a tragic and heartbreaking case that happened in Texas. It's from 2020, and it was the trampoline death. You may or may not have heard about this case of little Jaylin Schwarz. Now, Jaylin Ann was born on November 10th of 2011 in Rockwall, Texas, to parents Alicia Anderton and David Rutherford. She was described as a bright and joyful little girl, and she was full of life, loved horseback riding, ice skating, and all things outdoors. Friends and family recall that she adored animals and was curious about history and science. Unfortunately, Jaylin's early life was tumultuous. By age 5, her mother's struggles led to custody being transferred to relatives. Jaylin and her younger sister Jade went to live with the Schwarz family, where Jaylin took the last name Schwarz. Even though she faced challenges, Jaylin had remained loving and friendly. She was also smaller than normal in stature for her age, and she was particularly vulnerable.
30-year-old Alicia Anderton, Jaylin's biological mother, faced personal struggles with substance addiction, and this affected her ability to care for Jaylin and Jade. According to Alicia, she lost custody of Jaylin around August 2017 after failing to overcome her addiction within the timeframe set by CPS. It was a devastating loss, but there was hope. Her stepsister, 34-year-old Ashley Schwarz, and Ashley's husband, 44-year-old Daniel Schwarz, agreed to take in the girls and ultimately adopted them. Daniel Schwarz took on the role of a de facto father figure to Jaylin.
Alicia truly thought that Ashley could provide a more stable home for Jaylin and Jade, and she attempted to turn her life around and work through recovery. And at first, things were going well, or so she thought. She did have visitation in the beginning, but then over time, she was blocked from seeing them. And she would ask Ashley if she could see Jaylin and Jade, but they would say no. And this was despite them having a court order where she could have visitation. And at this point, she was in a pretty bad situation because she couldn't check on her girls, so she didn't actually know what their treatment was like at the time. She continued to pursue legal avenues to enforce her visitation and also to regain custody, but then COVID-19 hit in early 2020, and that process was stalled in the courts. And tragically, Jaylin died before Alicia could ever see her again.
Evidence overwhelmingly showed that Ashley Schwarz was the primary instigator of mistreatment in the adoptive family, while her husband, Daniel, was involved, but possibly in a less dominant role. The couple had a system of punishments in place, which became increasingly severe over time. Then, on August 29th of 2020, a 911 call came into the Odessa Police Department. Jaylin had passed out and was unresponsive. But when EMS arrived, they found an alarming scene. Jaylin was lying motionless inside the house, and despite attempts at CPR, it was clear that she had been dead for some time.
Medics noted rigor mortis, stiffening of the body had already set in, and lividity, which is blood pooling, signs that were inconsistent with a sudden collapse moment before help arrived. These observations immediately raised red flags to investigators that the caregiver's timeline might actually be a lie or it was incomplete. Officers at the scene also noticed that her skin was warm and she appeared to have a sunburn. In fact, a forensic pathologist later reported that the photos showed Jaylin did have a sunburn that developed after death, meaning that her body was likely outdoors even after she had died. So this horrific detail indicated that the Schwarz did not promptly call 911 when Jaylin collapsed, possibly attempting to revive her themselves or even conceal the situation for a period of time before they finally went to seek help. Their initial story was that she was playing outside in the hot Texas weather and just collapsed.
On the day of the incident, Sergeant Scotty Chavez, lead investigator, and other officers interviewed Daniel and Ashley separately. Body cam footage recorded portions of these interviews. Ashley claimed that Jaylin had been playing on the trampoline and that Daniel found her unconscious. She described their efforts to cool Jaylin with water and perform CPR. However, both guardians omitted or downplayed the fact that this was actually a punishment.
Right. She was jumping, but she was being told she had to jump on the trampoline in 120-degree sunlight. And it was only under further questioning and investigation that the true nature of this game, as they called it, on the trampoline was actually a forced punishment. The inconsistencies in their stories and the physical evidence prompted detectives to secure a search warrant that very same day.
With the warrant, police collected numerous pieces of evidence from the property. One critical finding was the temperature readings. They measured 110 degrees degrees Fahrenheit on the trampoline mat and a scorching 150 degrees on the ground.
That is such an extreme environment to be subjected to, no matter who you are.
The investigators took Jaylin's clothing. She was reportedly sprayed with water, but by the time the EMS arrived, her clothes were already removed. There were no signs of broken bones or old bruises, so it seems like her death was caused by this form of punishment.
Yeah, it wasn't as though they found evidence that there was ongoing mistreatment from what they could see, which would be easier to conceal, because if they weren't bruising and doing other things that would show wounds, nobody would suspect anything was going wrong, and this could go on longer. Also, last year, there was a case of a little boy on a treadmill. It was very similar. His father would actually command that he run to, as punishment, and your body can only handle so much. And in this case, the autopsy conducted by the medical examiner confirmed that Jaylin's death resulted from dehydration, which can cause organ failure, brain swelling, and cardiac arrest, which likely was the chain of events that occurred before the collapse. The major finding was the internal effects of heat stroke and lack of fluids. The autopsy's ruling of homicide was pivotal. It meant that the medical examiner believed this was caused by another person's deliberate actions, giving law enforcement strong grounds to charge both Ashley and Daniel with murder.
But it was Jaylin's younger sister, Jade, whose testimony was the most damning. She had experienced the punishment herself and later described it to CPS workers and the court. She confirmed that neither she nor Jaylin was allowed to drink water during the ordeal, saying that she was not allowed to drink any water because she was not jumping. A direct quote from the police investigation.
And that is just so sad. One question was why these people were imposing such an extreme punishment that day. Authorities never publicly clarified what misdeed would have led to such, extreme punishment. They suggested that it could only possibly be something trivial, like not finishing chores or maybe a perceived lie, and that the Schwarz had this warped perspective of discipline and that it escalated to a deadly level. This case is also unusual because the murder weapon, so to speak, was a combination of the Texas sun and a trampoline. So it required prosecutors to essentially illustrate a scenario of death by exercise. After Jaylin's death, her mother, Alicia, was heartbroken and angry, and in interviews with the local media, she tearfully apologized to her deceased daughter for not being able to save her. She said, "I am so, so sorry that I didn't bring you back home like I promised that I would. I'm so sorry for everything that I've put you through."
What upsets me the most is that I never got to see her alive again. When they took them, I never even got to say goodbye. So I have not had any closure for the past almost 4 years. I was surprised that it wasn't more than just dehydration, because the little girl that I saw in the casket did not look like an 8-year-old girl. She was so tiny. She was so tiny. She was so tiny. In the warrant affidavit, they had stated that when first responders arrived on scene, that rigor mortis had already set into her body, meaning that she laid there on that trampoline for at least an hour and a half to 2 hours before anybody ever even found her. How does that even happen? How? I don't understand. I want answers. And then, I still remember it like it was yesterday. The first time that I saw her in almost 4 years was laying in a casket. And that's not fair. It's not fair to me. There's not a day that goes by that I don't totally break down. But the most important thing that I needed to tell them was that I'm sorry. I'm so sorry that I didn't bring you back home like I promised you that I would. And that was so important to me. That was the most important thing that I could ever say to her, was that I'm sorry for everything that I have put you through. It's not fair to her or to her sister, but I hope that she knows my heart now And she knows that I was trying very, very hard to get to them, and I could have saved her.
Now, Alicia takes comfort that her Jaylin is buried nearby. She says whether it's 10 minutes or 2 hours, she visits her every day.
If that's all I get now, I'll take it. I'll take it, and I will treasure it for the rest of my life. If that's all I'm given when it comes to her. If that's all I'm given, I will take it any day. It's not what I wanted. It's not what I want, but I would take it. And I will make her beautiful all the time, just as she was in life.
Alicia also described Ashley and Daniel as sadistic guardians and expressed deep regret for ever trusting them to care for Jaylin and Jade. Of course, the public was immediately angry, calling for the harshest punishments against the Schwarz.
It came out that Daniel was home on the day of the incident. Ashley told investigators that he was the one who found Jaylin collapsed and carried her inside, but prosecutors suggested that both guardians enforced the punishment and that Daniel did nothing to stop it. Reports confirmed that Ashley was home with Jaylin and Jade on August 29th of 2020, and it was under her orders that the girls were sent outside to jump on the trampoline. Jade's testimony directly pointed to Ashley, saying that she was the one who forced the girls to jump on the trampoline that day for hours. So Ashley admitted that she knew Jaylin was in distress, but by then, it was too late. In October of 2020, a grand jury indicted both Ashley and Daniel Schwarz on multiple felony charges related to Jaylin's death. They were both charged with capital murder. Ashley's trial was first taking place in 2023 when she was 37. The jury deliberated for just 3.5 hours before finding her guilty of capital murder for intentionally and knowingly causing Jaylin's death. Under Texas law, this conviction meant a mandatory life sentence without the possibility of parole.
Prosecutors in this case did not pursue the death penalty. And in May of 2023, Ashley was formally sentenced to life in prison.
The judge also imposed 2 additional life sentences for the injury charges related to the prior mistreatment, though these sentences were ordered to run concurrently, assuring she will remain in prison for the rest of her life.
Today's update that we wanted to talk about was in Daniel's case, because on March 6th of 2025, the 49-year-old agreed to a plea deal. He pleaded guilty to a reduced charge of manslaughter in relation to Jaylin's death. The plea bargain, which was accepted by the court, meant they would drop the capital murder charge. Daniel was sentenced to 18 years in prison, and he is in the custody of Texas Department of Criminal Justice. The documents show that he acknowledged criminal responsibility for Jaylin's death through reckless behavior, though without admitting intent to kill. He will be required to serve a substantial portion of that 18-year sentence under Texas law, and will probably be in his 60s by the time he is released, if he ever is granted parole.
With both perpetrators sentenced, the focus turned to healing for Jaylin's family and making sure her younger sister Jade was safe. Alicia has continued speaking out about the failures that led to her daughter's death, and efforts were made to reunite her with Jade, who by all indications was returned to her biological family's custody after the incident.
This story really does show that there are so many issues with the agencies that choose where to place these individuals. It definitely remains an example of all the failures within foster care and adoptions. But what I was wondering is, this was a stepsister of Alicia. They were, by marriage related. And it seemed like Ashley went out of her way to become a caregiver. So that I was questioning, why a stepsister? Wasn't there anyone else? Said she really thought that this was a loving family. It was, a husband and wife, that they were married. They were going to give her a good life, like a mother and father. It didn't turn out that way. And then I wondered, could they have had good intentions in the beginning, but maybe hadn't been in this situation before, hadn't been caregivers, and they were in over their head? But then why not contact the agency? Why not tell them, oh, I'm having trouble taking care of them? I mean, there's so many other things they could have done than this.
In the military, if you're a bad boy, they make you do push-ups, you go running, you do all kinds of weird calisthenics, but these are non-adults.
Or bad girl, but you're speaking from personal experience because he had to go to military school when he was younger. So I do understand that. Physical punishments, I guess you could call it, like running a lap, But exactly, not adults. This isn't a normal way to discipline someone. And also, Ashley's demeanor at trial, she was trying to place the blame on her husband. But of course, the jury was not convinced.
Especially when Jade pointed her out directly.
Right. Like she was the one wanting them to do this, and the husband was following her lead. I don't know why. They said he was like weaker, like he was less dominant.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, well, he could have also been acting that way because he could have at any moment let someone know what his wife was doing if he knew it was wrong. I don't know. What do you guys think of cases like this? They're very sad. And I don't even like talking. He knows we do not like talking about non-adult cases. But this one came up and there was an update. And it is shocking. And it was interesting because like they said in Texas, it was like the Texas sun and a trampoline. You don't normally hear a headline or see a headline where people are talking about a murder weapon being things like that. So that's why it stood out, but also because it's horrific. And you're trusting that when you're trying to get help, and that's another thing, this mother, you know, it's not uncommon. You're struggling, you're young. She was fairly young when she had both children. She's trying to get her life back in order. She's relying on a system that's supposed to provide care. And then she can't even focus on trying to get healthy because she's worried about what's going on and can't even get in contact.
Right. The family's denying her visitation.
And then they could have said, oh, well, she's an unfit, person, and that's why she shouldn't have been in contact. But all in all, there should be oversight. There should be some kind of, these agencies should be doing visitations where they're with them asking questions. But it's not uncommon for people not to say anything. The people who are being mistreated, not to admit it.
Right, to keep it all in.
They're fearful that they're going to be in a worse situation.
Right.
Like, oh, I don't want to be with a stranger. I'd rather be with my step-aunt.
Especially if you've tried before and got nowhere and just more repercussions of trying to do so.
So that's all we have for you today. I know this is a new series. We're still kind of getting warmed up on bringing you these cases. So be kind in the comments, but also share your thoughts. We like to communicate with you there. We like to go back and forth, hear all of your insights. Maybe you have past experiences that are similar. I hear that so many times.
Thank you so much for watching today's video.
We'll see you in our next one. Bye.